State Representative Doyle Heffley, you have a strong distaste for peanut butter. You have a hot dog roller in your office. You call avocados guacamoles, I hear. Is that
Guacamoles.
Guacamoles. And you are the sole person keeping the Pandora music streaming app in business. Above all else, you are a strong warrior in the Zimmerman's versus Gears iced tea debate. Zimmerman's. So why are you on Zimmerman's side?
Because it's a Carbon County thing.
Carbon County is Gears not from Carbon County?
Well, Gears is in Schuylkill County, but it's more of it's just the big debate, Gears and Zimmerman's. I actually know the Zimmerman family, and I was just in there to get some a case of iced tea last week. So.
Gotcha.
You've entered the smoke-filled room, where we cut through the haze of Harrisburg politics and get to examine the laws and lawmakers that really drive the discussion.
So, like you said, you represent Carbon County,
Yes.
Which just so happens to include the real-life hallmark town of Jim Thorpe. Who was Jim Thorpe?
Jim Thorpe was probably one of the greatest American athletes, I would say, probably ever. He was the first president of the National Football League, which is interesting. A lot of people don't know that about him. But he was an American Indian, and he won the 1912 Olympics, and he passed away in the 50s. And when he passed away, there was a sportscaster in Carbon County, Boyle, who had made the suggestion to recognize the athlete, and his final resting place is in what was once the town of Mock Chunk and East Mock Chunk, the two boroughs combined, renamed the town Jim Thorpe after the athlete, and he's buried in a mausoleum. And if you ever come to the town of Jim Thorpe, you definitely want to take the trip up to look at the mausoleum and see the different accomplishments that this incredible athlete has made in his lifetime.
So when you go to Jim Thorpe, there's a lot of local, like small businesses there in the main strip. Do you have a favorite shop there?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I like them all. There's some great restaurants. Oral's is great. Molly's Pub is phenomenal if you like Irish pub food. The Inn at Jim Thorpe's good. Notch 8's great for different types of beer and wine and tastings. There's just so many great restaurants. Mist for sushi is really good. The hot dog stand in the park. There's just, sometimes my wife and I, we like to go to Jim Thorpe, and we just kind of walk up Broadway and down Ray Street, and just really enjoy and take it all in. We've done the train ride several times. I grew up in Packerton, right by the Flagstaff, just outside of Jim Thorpe. So where I grew up, kind of overlooked. We'd ride our bikes up to the top of the hill, and you could overlook downtown Jim Thorpe. So it's always had I've always had an affection for the town, and it's just it's a great place, and now you see so many tourists coming in. It's wonderful to have that many folks come in and enjoy the town.
Your State Representative Doyle Heffley, your district is 122nd, correct?
Yes.
Which is just Carbon County?
Yes.
Yes, gotcha. What makes your district so special?
Me?
You?
No. I mean, Carbon County is rich in history. If you think back, it was a French and Indian War Fort Allen built in Carbon County in Williamsport, right? Like not even a block from where my office is today. The coal history, the agricultural history of Carbon County. Anthracite coal was actually discovered up in the Summit Hill area. We had the Switchback Railroad, the first gravity-fed railroad, Asa Packer and Lehigh Coal Navigation, the Lehigh Canal, now it's a D&L Trail, the railroads, just the outdoors experience of whitewater rafting now. Weatherly Borough, the great little town of Weatherly, you go up into Banks Township and Packer Township. It's just a great. I mean, it's just really the Panther Valley. There's just so much history. The Molly Maguires were tried in the Carbon County Courthouse and actually hung in the Carbon County Prison.
Who was that?
The Molly Maguires. It was an Irish secret society, if you want to call it that. But it started with the coal miners, and there were discrepancies with the labor, kind of a labor movement, but also a little bit more There was just a lot of pushback in the hard life and the difficulties that the miners had, and they kind of this Molly Maguire's kind of started as almost like the first labor union type of thing.
Gotcha.
But there was some violence and some murders and there was some other stuff that had gone on, organized crime, kind of, but not. It's more or less like a labor movement, but. Yeah, it's a rich history, and it really reading and about that history and seeing where Carbon County's role in that, Carbon and Schuylkill County, is great. I mean, then you have the Heighton Borough, the first settlement, the Naden Hutton settlement was ended in an Indian massacre where Moravian settlers were actually massacred there. They're actually buried at the Lake Heighton Cemetery. And then you had the Fort Allen, which is I mentioned there in Williamsport. You had the Palmerton area, Tolmensing Township, where some of the first folks that settled that area had come into the Tolmensing Township. Tolmensing, which means thick forest. It's an Indian word. And then you had the New Jersey Zinc Company, which started up there. You had the Packerton Yards, which the Packerton Shops, which is a huge railroad facility. New Jersey Zinc Company kind of built the town. We've dealt with some of the legacy of being having a zinc operation there with the contaminants and regrowth of the mountain, of revegetation. So, but it's just hardworking people. It's a blue collar county, right? Hardworking blue collar folks.
What was it like growing up there?
It was great. I mean, I grew up. I have two sisters and a brother. There were four of us. My mom and dad. My dad worked at the Bethlehem Steel, and it was great. We rode bike, played in the woods. Did a little bit of everything. The family always had a garden, so we raised a lot of our own vegetables. And my mom would can and jar a lot of stuff, and learned all that stuff. I have a lot of cousins, a lot of family, so we were always getting together with family and cousins, and just always outside playing. And yeah, it was great.
Because the area that you represent, it's still considered to be part of the Poconos, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Poconos.
Outskirts.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Poconos, some would say the foothills of the Poconos, but it's there's 3 ski resorts in Carbon County: Jack Frost, Big Boulder, and Blue Mountain Ski Area, whitewater rafting, and a lot of tourism. We have resorts. You have, obviously, we mentioned earlier, the downtown Jim Thorpe, the train rides. So yeah, tourism is probably our number one industry in Carbon County.
Gotcha.
But it's great. I lived there my whole life. Right, I grew up in Lake Heighton. I live in Palmerton with my wife, and we have 2 daughters. I have a granddaughter, another grandson on the way. So it's wonderful, and it's just a great community to live in. It's just great, hardworking people.
What were some of the biggest issues facing your community while you were growing up and today?
While I was growing up, the New Jersey Zinc Company was kind of that the era was coming to an end, so to speak. So I had a lot of friends and family that their parents worked there. Also, the Bethlehem Steel, right? That era was coming to an end as well. So people, those were like staples. A lot of folks worked there, good paying jobs, benefits, and those industries were kind of leaving. So there was always that, kind of uneasiness, for families as to how they're going to provide for their families. So yeah, but other than that, I mean, there's some of the opportunities, but there were also a lot of great things going on. We had great sports programs. I went to Lake Heighton High School, played football there. Always had opportunities to participate in community events, scouting, different booster clubs for
You're
football.
an Eagle Scout, correct?
An Eagle Scout. Very active in scouting, and so there was always a lot of great things to do growing up in that community, in that area.
What did you do after high school?
I went to Lincoln Tech. I have an associate's degree in architectural drafting and design, and it's a great program. I learned a lot. I highly recommend technical schools.
Where did that interest come from?
Always had a lot of interest in art. I used to draw a lot, and always very active in that, and just seemed like the thing to do at the time. And I still have that. I have that degree, had that background, worked in that field a little while.
Where do you see the trades going in the future?
I think those trade jobs are always going to be there, right? There's always going to be electricians and plumbers, those service-connected jobs. So I think it's, builders, I think the trades are really going to be where it's at. I mean, have you tried to get your oil changed in your vehicle lately? And you call up for an oil change, they book you next month. It's like, I'm 100 miles over now, right? So there's going to be a big need for that.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of those service jobs and those trade jobs and in trucking and building, construction trades. I think that's going to be a really big thing, especially like AI is kind of a game changer, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really going to, our economy is going to evolve fast. The number one thing I always tell people, if you have a good, strong work ethic, you're always going to have a good job.
So after graduating from, what do you say, Lincoln
Tech.
Tech, you went into trucking, correct? Or what was the journey to that?
Roundabout way, I that's where I got to. But when I came out of Lincoln Tech, and then I worked a couple of different things, doing some blueprints, and the economy was tight. There was the early '90s. Housing had kind of tanked. When I went into school, things were going well, and then the housing industry kind of, it was in a down cycle. And I bartended and waited tables. Worked at the ski area. It was my first job when I turned 16. I worked at the ski resort, and so I got a free ski pass, made a little bit extra money, and through high school and worked there. While I went through Lincoln Tech, I worked there, and I also would bartend on the side. I did some of that bartending, and then I got a job for a company that recycled hazardous waste down at the Bethlehem Steel. I did that for about a year, and they got laid off because they shut down that operation, and then I went back, worked part-time at the ski area. I figured if I'm laid off in the wintertime, I might as well go skiing. And I got a job, and I worked for Conrail. I worked on the railroad for about a year. Right after I came out of that, I met my wife. We started dating, and her father had a trucking company. And that's when Conrail was going through some tough times. They laid a bunch of us off for the kind of the winter season, and I got my CDL license and decided to start driving truck.
So you eventually then, after, how many years did you do that for?
I drove full time. I still have my Class A CDL and my physical card, so I can jump in a truck tomorrow and drive. Although they've changed a lot over the years, I did that full time for about 7 years, and then I wound up having some issues with my lower back and just having some problems. And I went into dispatching, and then eventually became a terminal manager. And I worked for a national carrier after that, and then for a regional carrier before he decided to run for office. I managed 3 terminals and about 100 and some drivers at the last position I held.
How important is the trucking industry to the United States and Pennsylvania specifically?
Everything that you're wearing, anything that you buy, whether it's delivered on your front porch or you're picking up at the grocery store, at some point was hauled on a truck. So yeah, it is one of the larger industries in the nation, yeah, it's great. I still kind of stay in tune with the trucking industry as to what's going on. I served on the Transportation Committee for many years here in Harrisburg, and right now I chair the Human Service Committee. But I've always had an eye on transportation and different bills, and worked on different legislation to kind of help that industry to continue to be prosperous. Because at the end of the day, the more efficient the transportation industry is, the trucking industry is, the better we can move goods around, the safer it is for the communities, but also at the end of the day, the cheaper it is to buy the things that you're going to buy in a store or have delivered to your house because of the transportation costs.
What do you think about the potential of autonomous vehicles taking over the trucking industry?
I think there's going to be there's already a lot of autonomy in the vehicles. If you've ever driven a vehicle that has if you drift a little bit out of the lane, it vibrates. The high beams, like if you're driving and the high beams automatically go down. So my wife's car has that feature. My truck doesn't. So I apologize to all the people that I've given the high beams in my driving to my truck, because I'm like, whoa, you kind of get used to that, right? You get used to all those different features. But there's a lot of autonomy in vehicles right now, whether it be in a commercial vehicle or in your personal vehicle, and that's going to continue to evolve. I've had the opportunity to actually drive, and this is about 8 or 9 years ago. They did a demo here in Harrisburg where I actually got in a car and it drove around 3 or 4 city blocks. The driver was in the seat but wasn't operating anything. The vehicle drove. They have the autonomous taxi cabs in certain states. I know Google's doing a lot of work in Pittsburgh. We actually worked on legislation when I was on the committee for that. I think I don't know that in order to be totally autonomous, all the vehicles would have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
So that if there's a car coming down and you're getting ready to pull out, that it's going to know to slow down to allow this car out. I think we're a little bit away from that, but if you look at some of the things that Tesla is doing right now, I'm old school. I still would drive a stick shift if I could. It's harder to find, and hopefully at some point I'll get another vehicle that's a standard shift transmission. I like to drive. I have a pickup truck. I have a Hemi. That's what I like. I know people that have electric vehicles and they love them. I've driven them. I think they're pretty cool. But I do see an incredible opportunity for senior citizens. A lot of times, people come to my office and they have issues and they have to get a ride. We're a very rural county, and most of the state is very rural. So mass transit in rural Pennsylvania is incredibly expensive and inefficient, right? Because you don't have like a 9 o'clock bus running from point A to point B, or one person on it, right? Because the populations are so small. So I do see the opportunity to have autonomous vehicles, or just like an Uber type of system where senior citizens are going to have a doctor's appointment and they don't have a ride to get there, and they're going to be able to call somebody either via Uber or have their own autonomous vehicle that can drive them to the doctor's appointment and back.
Does it worry you at all, though?
No. Have you seen some of the people on the road?
Fair.
Yeah. No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, are we gonna embrace tech? I think sometimes you look at technology. What scares me is your cell phones. You look at what it's doing to mental health and kids. That's not the only thing that's going on with that. But yeah, I don't know. When the automobile came out, I guess the people that were putting shoes on horses were kind of worried they were going to not have job security, and they didn't. Right? Everything's going to change. Everything's going to evolve. How do we? And that's kind of a role of government in a sense, but in society, how do we make sure it's safe? Right? Nuclear energy is providing, carbon-free energy for a lot of folks. The nuclear bomb, not so much a good thing.
Yep.
Did end the Second World War. I totally support ending the Second World War, don't get me wrong. But how do we use this technology going forward? And autonomous vehicle, AI, anything that's out there, can it be used for good or can it be used for bad? And yeah, anything can, right? You can take your car out and get in an accident, or you can drink and drive and cause an accident. That's a bad thing. Or you can take your car and drive to a doctor's visit, or to go to your job. So there's good and bad in anything, and I think we need to look at technology that in that same realm. These are useful tools, but how do we manage it to have a positive effect on society?
Recently, it came out that a illegal immigrant with ties to terrorism was granted a CDL by the Shapiro administration. Did that surprise you at all?
It surprised me in a sense that we got to this point. But no, if you look at the policies of what Joe Biden's the open borders policy, when we were just letting in anybody, they walk across the border and say, oh, they claim asylum. Oh, okay, here, we're just going to give you citizenship. And then what's going on at PennDOT and that, our governor wasn't watching that and a real ID. I have senior citizens come to my office that are in their 70s and 80s, women that are widowed and maybe remarried. They got to jump through all kinds of hoops to get a real ID so they can get on a plane and fly to visit their grandkids in another part of the country, because they got to they were married and they have to get their marriage certificate that shows their name change and everything else. But yet here you got a guy with terrorist ties, comes over, gets a real ID. That's both state and federal. That's just insane. How difficult it is for people in this country, the hoops they got to jump through to get an ID or get on a plane. And we have people that we know are terrorists coming from other countries. And then I'm very happy with the current administration's policies on the border and tightening up our border. I was in New York City the morning of 9/11. I was out of the city before that's when I was driving truck. I made my delivery in that morning, and I was back out before any of the planes hit the buildings. But I used to drive to New York City almost every day in my driving time. And I remember, people say don't forget 9/11. I don't forget it. I do remember it. Who would have thought that a handful of terrorists were going to kill as many people as they did on that one given day? So yeah, I think we need to make sure that we have the right people in our country, that people that are getting IDs are going to be people that we want to have here driving their vehicles. Driving a commercial vehicle, 80,000-pound vehicle on the road, is a tremendous responsibility. And we want to make sure that only those people that should be entitled to have that. So yeah, I would definitely call on this governor to have an investigation. And we've also, supported the letter that our leadership had written to have the Attorney General look into it. But somebody doesn't deserve, somebody shouldn't have a job after giving somebody like that a CDL license.
According to the U.S. U.S. Census Bureau, I believe, about 30% of the trucking business industry right now is immigrants. About 30% of truckers are immigrants, legal, I'm assuming. Does that concern you at all, of that increase?
No, look, trucking or these truck drivers provide a valuable service, and it's a good job. You can make a good livable wage, but it's a tough job, and not a lot of people want to do that. If somebody wants to come to this country, I'm not opposed to immigration, but let's have legal immigration, right? Let's have people that are going to come here and work on the books. Let's make sure that they're going to be compliant with all the DOT regulations. What I used to really burn me up as a driver is we would lose contracts because folks would hire illegal immigrants or illegals to run trucks and run freight, cut our rates. So we were paying, salaries, benefits, paid time off, healthcare benefits to the family of the driver, and we were losing out because people were running illegal. So I think there needs to be some accountability there. But I always say, every driver in the morning, whenever they start their day, when they go leave for work, everybody, when you leave for work in the morning, you want to go to work, you want to do your job, and you want to come home safely. And every truck driver, that when they pull out, they want to come home safely. Nobody wants to go out and get in an accident. Nobody wants to be delayed. Nobody wants to lose a life, or nobody wants to cause the loss of a life when they go out on the road, right? So if people want to immigrate to this country legally, go through the process to get a CDL license. They can speak English. They can communicate and follow the rules of the road. Yeah, I think it's great that they want to drive a truck or work in any other field, but it's got to be done responsibly and legally.
Do you think that being able to speak English should be a criteria for obtaining a CDL license?
I think being able to communicate in English, yes. Do you have to be, do you have to do you have to graduate 12th grade English, or maybe an 8th grade English level? Yeah, but you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to read the road signs. You have to be able to read the map. And look, in trucking these days, everything's automated. I mean, when I used to drive truck, we got a little card with the directions on it, and we had a bunch of maps that you had to look around. Now, I mean, they have onboard communication. The drivers are getting their load sent right to their truck. It's telling them where to go, and they're following those directions. But you still got to know what you're doing. Operating a commercial vehicle on the road is it's something that requires a skill level, and we want to make sure that they're responsible. So yeah, we need to make sure that that the drivers that are getting these licenses are legal and don't have any kind of convictions. I opposed legislation on the House floor that was going to allow people with felony convictions to not disclose that when looking for a job, and I think all those things need to be disclosed. I think trucking companies have a responsibility to the public, and drivers have a responsibility to the public to operate safely on the highways.
Despite only making up less than half the current workforce, the baby boomer generation and Gen Xers make up about 75% of the trucking industry today, and it seems like they're having a very hard time appealing to younger people. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's been a truck driver shortage for many, many years. I think there's ways that we can look at evolving as we see equipment changing. We can maybe look at ways to increase load capacities so we don't have so many trucks on the road, especially when the equipment's becoming safer and safer. But yeah, I mean, look, we have an issue across the board, and we don't have a shortage of lawyers, but other than that, there's a shortage of pretty much any other profession, right? Nurses, school teachers, truck drivers, auto mechanics, building trades. There's a shortage because we have an issue of depopulation, right? So we have, I was one of four. I have two daughters, and as families get smaller and populations start to condense a little bit, we're going to see this is going to be an issue. I think the AI and some of the productivity things, but I'm encouraging people that we need more babies. We need more babies in this country because that's the population is something that's population declines, as we're seeing all over Europe, are having a devastating effect on the economies in Europe. and it could happen here in this nation. So we want to, definitely encourage folks to, if they want to go out and have children, but we need to make it affordable to have children, and that helps us across the board in every major workforce.
How did you get involved in politics?
I've always been, interested in politics. I've read a lot of books, used to listen to a lot of talk radio, read a lot of books. I've always been very interested in history, social sciences. I love studying the Civil War, and read a lot of books on world history and American history, and got involved in the Republican Party as a committee person, helped other people run for campaigns, and got more and more involved. And eventually, the opportunity was there to run for office. I was kind of irritated about some things, the way things were going, and I ran for office. And we weren't successful the first time, but the second time I ran, there was a retirement, and there was an open seat. I ran for that seat and was able to get elected. And it's been a humbling experience, and it's really an honor to serve.
What is one of the issues that was an issue back when you first ran that's still an issue today, and why do you think it hasn't been resolved yet?
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things
A lot to
we
choose
worked
from,
out.
yeah.
You come here and you think, well, I come from transportation. Like, I'm going to tackle all these major transportation issues, right? And you get here and you start working on things, and you get little things done, and you realize how complex each issue is. Probably the greatest thing that we got done was we set up the opioid task force, and at the time we were losing close to 6,000 Pennsylvanians a day to overdoses. It was just or no, sorry, not a day, 6,000 a year to overdoses, and we set up a way to combat overprescribing of opioid drugs. We formed a task force. We got over 15 recommendations. Some of them were done legislatively. About 7 different laws were passed, and about 8 different regulations were passed. And we really cut down on how we prescribe opioids in the Commonwealth. Percocet, and some of the other opioids, as we've seen now with the Purdue pharmacy and some of the documentaries out there, but this was in the middle of it. We really cracked down on how we prescribe opioids, and we saved a lot of lives. So that was something that took us some time. But we got the medical society, the insurers, we got the hospitals, the healthcare providers, everybody involved in that. We came up with prescribing guidelines for adolescent prescribing of opioids, and in the first year alone, those guidelines, we cut down 50%
Wow.
on prescribing of opioid drugs to adolescents. So often, an athlete would get hurt on the sports field, or a young person would get hurt in a car accident. They'd be prescribed 30 days of a prescription drug that it's equivalent to heroin, right? Percocet
Yep.
is heroin.
Yep.
It's the same thing, right? So there's the thing that people, we talk about heroin, Percocet and those other prescription drugs that they were prescribing are the same thing. And unknowingly, so many young people got addicted, and families and lives were absolutely destroyed. So going through that process, working on legislation to stem that, and we're seeing those deaths, the overdose deaths declining. There's still a lot of work to be done in that area. That was something that kind of wasn't like that wasn't what on my radar when we ran, but when you get here, you look at what opportunities are here, what needs to be addressed, and that was one of the number one things. So I was really happy that we were able to get that done, make that impact, but I still think there's some things that I still would like to get done in that realm. But then, look, property taxes are a huge issue. That hasn't been resolved yet, but I'm going to continue to work on it. I'm always introducing legislation. We got the property tax rent rebate program expanded. We did take away the exemption, so school districts cannot just raise taxes above the rate of inflation anymore without voter referendum. There were some good steps, but there's still much more work to be done on that, and we're going to continue to work on that. I live it. My property taxes are insanely high, as are my neighbors and the people in my community, so I'm not going to quit when it comes to that, but we have not got the support of this governor, nor the previous governor, nor right now the majority of the state house does not believe that property taxes are an issue, but I'm going to continue to push that.
So this is your, I believe, second session as the chair of the
Yep, the
Human Services
Republican
Committee.
chair of the Human Services Committee.
So what exactly does the Human Services Committee do?
So we deal with a lot. It's a lot, but we deal with the addiction, right? Addiction treatment, addiction services. We deal with intellectual disabilities and services for folks that rely on them, and we also deal with mental health. behavioral health issues. So there's a lot. Pretty much, it used to be health and human services. They split. Human services is about 40% of the state budget. So it really overlaps a lot with healthcare. We look at one of the things we're really looking at is our crisis. And when you have folks come into the emergency departments right now in a mental health crisis, how do we best service them? How do we connect them with the services that they need to get better? And the addiction, obviously we continue to strive to get folks, the care that they need or the treatment that they need, but also at the same time looking at how do we make sure that people aren't exposed to that, and how do we, look at prevention. So that's, and then the intellectual disabilities, how do we make sure that people that need assistance, people that maybe need somebody to come to their house every day to help them get out of bed, help them use the facilities, help them to eat, or people that maybe rely on, whether it be disability access to different things, how do we make sure that they're getting what they need so they can live productive lives? So that's kind of
So they oversee any bills that have
any
to
bill
do
like
with
that's
the
going to
Department
any
of-
bill like
okay.
that's going to come through DHS, and we have oversight over Department of Human Services as well, and DDAP, Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs.
Gotcha. So I believe at one point, I don't know if this is still the case or not, but the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services is, or at one point was, the largest state agency in the entire United States.
It very likely could still be that way. Yeah. So you look at your SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
Like, you look at your state funding and all the federal programs that come through there. So your Medicaid, but now Medicaid also Department of Health overlaps with a lot of that. So a lot of states.
Gotcha.
Sometimes it's health and human services. We have human services and health, but there's a lot of overlap in between there.
How much fraud is there in the Department of Human Services? I know we hear about it a lot.
Well, I think there's an element of fraud. Yeah, there is fraud. There's people say, well, how did that person qualify for this or that? So there's people that maybe shouldn't qualify for things that are getting it, and then there's just people that are out there scamming it and fraudulently abusing the system. There's other people feel that they are entitled to it, but maybe they're not. So we're constantly working on legislation and putting things in place to provide accountability in human services.
You were a yes on this most previous budget. I imagine part of that had to do with the amount of benefit reforms and
Yeah, there was a lot of benefit integrity measures that were put into this budget. A lot of it brings us in compliance with the Trump administration's policies that were passed under the big beautiful bill. But there are things like Medicaid, the work requirements for Medicaid and SNAP benefits, that you got to work at least 20 hours a week, right? And how do we report that then, right? So you can either work or you can volunteer, right? You don't even have to work if you can volunteer at any nonprofit organization, and you can still receive those benefits. But how do we make sure that that the dollars that are being directed into those programs, people are going to be accountable for them? The SNAP benefits, for example, there's a lot of fraud and scamming devices that steal benefits from people that need them. And we want to put the chip that you see on your credit card, we want to make sure there's a chip on there instead of just a swipe. It's harder to get scammed on that. SNAP balances. Why do some people have so much money left in their SNAP card that they never use? So there's a lot of measures, and Senator Argala worked on some of that integrity stuff in the Senate. He was here in the House, and we were able to incorporate a lot of those measures into the Human Service Code.
And real quick, what is SNAP for people who don't know?
Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. I think after this past month, everybody knows what SNAP
So
is.
food stamps.
Yeah, food
essentially.
stamps. Yeah, but it's now it's a card, like it's the EBT card, electronic benefit card.
So last year, SNAP's error rate was at 10.4%.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Either the error rate could be that somebody didn't get the benefits that they qualified for, or somebody was getting benefits that they didn't qualify for. So that needs to be addressed, and that was one of the things that we put in the Human Service Code.
The number one item purchased by SNAP recipients is soda, and it's estimated that almost a quarter of all SNAP benefits are spent on junk food. Do you think there should be more stringent guidelines on what
I
is
think
and
we want to
isn't?
make. I think we want to make sure that people are eating healthy and having healthy alternatives. But at the same time, I'm kind of a limited government kind of guy. I don't think we're going to run in and raid everybody's refrigerator, tell them what they can't eat and can't drink. I mean, I like my cigars every now and then. I'm not asking the government to pay for them, right? Actually, they're getting quite a few taxes off it. But I don't want to tell people how to live their lives, what they can drink. But what I would tell them is that you want to focus on having a healthy dietary. Having a healthy diet is definitely going to lead you to a healthier lifestyle.
You kind of hinted towards this, but this year we saw a fairly long federal government shutdown that resulted in approximately 42 million people losing their SNAP benefits momentarily. 42 million is about 12% of the nation's population, which is pretty much right on line with our poverty, the amount of people in poverty in the United States. Do you think that number's too high?
No, I mean, look, I see people that there's a lot of times they're senior citizens. A lot of times people that are on Social Security, and if they lose a spouse and their tax burden is so high, and depending on people are living longer than ever before, and sometimes there's some they get in a tight spot. Then you have folks that maybe are lose a job or anything like that. So we want to make sure that there's that gap in there to make sure that people are going to have the food that they need, and then until they get back on their feet. So if it's the younger folks, we want them to the work requirements, essentially getting them back into the workforce, getting them back to be sustainable. Because resiliency is something that we need in our economy. Things are going to change. We talked about AI. Things are going to change and evolve. We want people to be able to have the tools they need to take care of themselves and not be reliant on these government programs. But at the end of the day, there are certain folks people that are disabled, people that are elderly. I don't have a problem with making sure that they have enough food to eat. But people that are able-bodied, we want to get them back into workforce because they're going to be much happier working and then sitting home collecting.
What is Medicaid?
Medicaid is insurance for those folks that is run by the state, right? Medicare is that's federal. Medicaid is money we get from the federal government and the state puts in, and they run Medicaid. So that could be with anything that under Obamacare, vastly expanded Medicaid. Medicaid is government insurance. At the state level.
So when Governor Shapiro was Attorney General, he said that he believes that there was $3 billion in Medicaid fraud alone. Now that he's governor, has he been open to any reforms from the Republican caucus to cut that number, to bring that number down?
No, and I don't know where his number. I mean, the governor's a governor. He was the Attorney General. I wish he would have focused a little bit more on the opioid crisis, quite honestly. Yeah, I mean, look, we always want to make sure that there's accountability in Medicaid. Sometimes you read about it every now and then. There are measures in place, right, for false billing, right? That happens from time to time for providers that aren't honest, will bill for services that were never administered, or double bill or something like that. So yeah, and when you're talking Medicaid, you're talking big numbers, right? And you go to the doctor, you look at your bill, and it's like everything's thousands of dollars, so it doesn't take long to rack that up. So yeah, those are. But I mean, look, Obamacare came along and expanded health care and put a lot of people on Medicaid that didn't have that option before. And all it really did was give people, not so good insurance, right? Medicaid is kind of that, like, this is what you need at this time. But I think we should really be striving to help employers to provide insurance to their employees, making that more affordable. And I think that would be the best thing for society because, working and having good health care is going to be a lot better than having a lot of folks on Medicaid.
Pennsylvania's population is aging a lot. And at the same time, a lot of the working age people are moving out of the state. Why do you think that is? What do you think the long-term effects on that will be with the Department of Human Services with things like Medicaid?
Oh, look, we're already in a crunch. We talked a little bit about it earlier about the labor shortage, right? More and more young people moving out. Young people pay, they're just caregivers, right? If you're in a nursing home, you get to that point in your life, and you want to know that there's somebody that's going to be there when you need assistance, right? But also, I think the other thing is families. They want their kids to live near them. Like they want their grandkids to grow up in their same community. We talked a little bit about my hometown growing up. I could go visit my grandparents. They were a half hour, 40 minutes away. I've seen my cousins, and you want to see that. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we have good quality jobs in Pennsylvania. We need to make sure we have a low tax base in Pennsylvania. So those are some of the things we need to continue to work on. If you want to keep young people here, look, I mean, tourism are one of our biggest industries, right? Tourism and agriculture. So if people want a vacation here, It's a beautiful area. Like I talked, we got 3 ski resorts. You see housing is booming. We want to attract those young people to stay here, people that live here and grow up here. But we need good jobs. We also need affordable housing, right? And I think some of what we're seeing here with the corporations like BlackRock and others and buying up residential housing, I think we need to take a look at. But some of our codes and the over-enforcement of codes by overzealous code enforcement officials and the governor just adopting these brand new international building codes just drives the cost of building up. And at the same time, developers can't develop property because it's so costly to develop property through the permitting process. So when I was growing up, people would buy an acre, 2 acres of land, and they'd build a 3-bedroom ranch on it, right? That's the American dream. Well, that's harder and harder. So they can't afford homes. I mean, look at new homes sales close to $400,000. We need to make sure that we're making, I wouldn't say low, we don't need like low income or affordable. We need our housing industry to provide houses where young families can buy a house and afford to live. And that means by not overtaxing their properties. That means by not overregulating how they have to build these things. Builders know how to build, and they're going to do it affordably, and not requiring all these other things that just jack up the cost and then force those mortgages so high. Where young people say, look, we're going to move out of the area. So, getting more people to buy their home and live here with a good paying job, that should be what we're focused on. And energy costs. We should have lower energy costs in the state of Pennsylvania, and that's going to keep people here as well.
How do you think that we can get more people out of poverty so that they're not relying on these benefits?
I think
I know it's a super open-ended question.
Well, look, I mean, I think that, the dignity of work, a good job, right? Get a good education, get a good job, and the dignity of work, and then capitalism, right? Giving people Medicaid, giving people government handouts isn't going to make their lives better, right? But a good job and the availability to buy a home and create a future for your family, that's what's going to keep people here.
What do you see being Pennsylvania's biggest issue in 20 years?
Biggest issue in 20 years from now? Look, we have to get a handle on property taxes. We should. 20 years ago that was an issue, and it's still a big issue now. I think energy. We need to make sure that we're producing the energy that we need, and infrastructure. Right, we're if you want to say an older state, we're relatively young by European standards, but we do have some infrastructure needs we need to continue to evolve, and then the population. We need to make sure that we're we don't have a declining population, that our population is growing. So all those things come together. We're going to, things that we do now or set us up for success in 20 years. Yeah, I think we have to look long term when it comes to, if we're going to build it now, what are the opportunities now? Not to be short sighted in what we do, but how do we look at things big picture?
Tell me about Talking with Doyle.
Talking with Doyle is a great podcast. It's just fun. It's just we have a lot of fun. We talk about legislation. We talk about a little bit of everything that's going on in the world and in the community.
And it's a way to,
you can go to my website, Doyle Heffley, repheffley.com, or go to my Doyle Heffley Facebook site, or just Google my name. It'll come up.
Gotcha.
But it's on YouTube, I believe.
Okay.
All right.
Representative Doyle Heffley, thank you very much.
Thank you.